Hello, my wonderful, nice, and wise women. I'm so happy to meet you because I am an owner of this channel and I'm happy to share with you a new story. I believe you are looking forward to it. You know that today I prepare for you wonderful Thanksgiving story and I believe you will like it because it's a story about my neighbor, about wonderful woman Jane who had very terrible Thanksgiving last year, but she decided that every black stripe can also be your start stripe. And you know what she did? When her husband told her, I met another girl, another woman, and decided just left her on Thanksgiving, she took all nice dishes which she prepared and just gave it for people who lived on the street. And you know what? I think God listened to her. I believe you will like this story. So subscribe to my channel and just give me your likes, your hearts. Thank you so much for your attention.
I thought all my life that nothing could ruin Thanksgiving. But unfortunately, the people closest to you can turn any day into hell. I remember that Thanksgiving in every detail. My husband came home from a business trip. I was putting a turkey in the oven according to his mother's family recipe. He asked me to sit down. I waved it off because there was still a lot to do. Our children were due to arrive in 2 hours. But he insisted, Jane, I'm leaving you. I met someone else. She's waiting for me. I can't be torn between the two of you anymore. I've made a choice. I'm sorry. I'm leaving you the house, all our money and everything we've earned. You've been good to me, but it's time for me to move on. Then everything was like a fog. He went upstairs to get his things, and I didn't stop cooking. I shredded salads, chopped meat and stuffed peppers. Vid quickly packed up and our house became empty and silent. An hour later I received a call from my daughter. Mom, I won't come. I met Michael. We want to celebrate together. Don't cry. We'll talk tomorrow. She didn't ask why I was crying or how to help me. Another half-hour later, my son John called me and started screaming into the phone. Dad told me everything. Mom, how could you let him go? What kind of woman are you? Why didn't you ask him to stay? Why didn't you fight for him? He's our dad. He shouted at me and accused me as if I were a traitor, as if I had broken up our family. I don't know what power kept me on my feet then. I didn't scream. I didn't explain anything. I just gathered all the food I had prepared and went under the bridge where the homeless were warming themselves. I did this every time I had leftovers from dinner. I packed everything neatly in plastic containers. It made 25 servings. I opened the trunk and handed out the food, wishing everyone around me a happy Thanksgiving. No one noticed that my hands weren't shaking from the cold, until he showed up 64-year-old John Steward, a millionaire I'd only seen on the news before. What could he be doing under a bridge on this freezing night? Just like I was handing out food, he put my container back in the trunk, took my hands in his, and said, "Someone needs a hug. Come here." I haven't hugged in a long time, and I'll be honest, I don't know how to do it. But if you teach me, I think we can do it. On that cold night, when my body and soul were in hell, he showed me that heaven still exists. The millionaire invited me to work. He asked me to be his personal chef. You see, they all fell for your dishes, and no one wants mine. You cook better than my team of chefs. I will fire everyone, as long as you agree. I agreed. If you're watching this right now, I'm guessing you've had one of those days too, the kind where your whole life snaps in half between putting the turkey in the oven and basting it the second time. My name is Jane. I'm 58 years old, and that was the last Thanksgiving I cooked for my family. You probably want to know what happened right after I said yes to the millionaire under the bridge. Did I jump into his limo and ride off into some Hallmark movie? Oh, honey, I wish. Real life is messier. Real life still has dishes in the sink and mascara dried on your cheeks. That night, when I finished handing out food, I sat in my car with the engine off, my breath fogging the windshield. I could still feel his hands warm, steady on mine. I stared at his business card on the passenger seat. Heavy cream stock, embossed letters, John Steward. Underneath, Steward Group Holdings. And in the corner, written by hand in blue ink, "You cook, I'll pay. Call me John." I laughed, actually laughed. The first sound out of my mouth that wasn't a sob or a broken inhale all day. I just got dumped, abandoned by both my kids, and offered a job by a stranger under a bridge. I said out loud to nobody. Well, Jane, at least it's not boring. I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly around town, past the lit windows where other families were sitting down to turkey and pie and small talk. At every red light, my phone lit up with notifications, group texts from relatives, Thanksgiving photos on social media, pictures of smiling couples and golden turkeys. I could have posted mine, here's my turkey, here's my empty table, here's my husband leaving with his roller suitcase. But I didn't. I turned the phone face down. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the house looked wrong. Too quiet, too dark. His car was gone, of course. I stepped inside, and the smell of roasted turkey wrapped around me like a memory that didn't belong to me anymore. The table was set for me, my husband, our daughter Lily, our son John, cloth napkins folded in little fans, the good plates his mother gave us our first Christmas together, candles waiting to be lit. I stood there in my coat, purse still on my shoulder, and realized this wasn't my home anymore. This was a stage set, and the lead actor had walked off. I didn't cry again. I was done with tears. They weren't helping. Instead, I moved on autopilot. I put the containers from under the bridge in the dishwasher, wrapped the turkey, packed away the salads. I was too tired to eat, too tired to think. I sat down at the table that he'd just walked away from and stared at his chair. 29 years, I whispered to it. And you left me like I'm a bad casserole you're sending back to the kitchen. You might think that's when I broke. But no, that was just the fracture line. The real break came later, when I found the bank statements. The next morning, my body woke up at 6 out of habit. When you're a mother, the alarm clock is basically tattooed into your nervous system. The house was still, not just quiet hollow. You know that feeling when you walk into an unfurnished apartment and every sound echoes? That's how my soul felt. I made coffee anyway. Muscle memory. 2 scoops, 1.5 cups of water. I grabbed the mug Vid bought me in some airport, best mom ever. I turned it around and looked at the words until they blurred. Best mom ever, I muttered. According to whom? Certainly not my children. I know you noticed it to my husband's nickname. Vid. His full name is David, but the kids couldn't say it properly when they were little. David turned into Vid, and it stuck. Even his colleagues sometimes called him that. I thought it was sweet, back when I still thought a lot of things were sweet. By 9, I'd washed the dishes, stripped the bed he'd slept in for almost 3 decades, and put his leftover aftershave into a plastic bag for the trash. I folded his robe and put it on a chair, just in case he came to his senses. I told myself, just in case he walked back through the door and said, Jane, I lost my mind. I don't know what I was thinking. Instead, the doorbell rang and handed me something else, the truth. It was a courier envelope from the bank. Happy Thanksgiving, right? I almost left it for later. But if you're anything like me, you know bad news doesn't get better with age. I sliced it open with a butter knife and slid out the stack of papers. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Pages and pages of account summaries, credit cards, investment accounts. My name at the top, Jane Miller, my social security number, my address. Then the lines of text resolved into meaning, and I felt my heart start pounding in my ears. Balances, savings account, $2,137. Investment account, $0.0. College fund, closed, joint account number 3472. Overdrawn. Overdrawn? I grabbed my reading glasses and checked again. There had to be some mistake. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I'd inherited money from my grandmother 10 years earlier, enough to build a cushion, a little security. Vid had always insisted on handling the finances. He'd said it like a gift. You shouldn't have to worry about boring details, Jane. You just make everything beautiful. I'll take care of the rest. He took care of it. All right. The phone number for our financial advisor was printed at the bottom. A man named Charles who'd always greeted me with Mrs. Miller and a firm handshake, then talked only to my husband. I dialed with shaking fingers. Thank you for calling Steward and Pine Wealth Management. This is Andrea, Charles. I said. I need to speak with Charles. It's urgent. There was a pause, the polite kind. May I ask who's calling? This is Jane Miller, David Miller's wife. Another pause. Then, one moment, Mrs. Miller. While I waited, I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard. The maple tree we'd planted when John was born had lost all its leaves. Its bare branches looked like bones. Jane! Charles's voice finally came on the line, smooth and practiced. How are you and David? Happy Thanksgiving. Charles, I said, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. My husband left me yesterday, and it looks like he took my money with him. So no, I'm not having a particularly happy Thanksgiving. He sucked in a breath. On his end, someone shuffled papers. Mrs. Miller, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Of course. Let me pull up your file. I heard clicking, the muted hum of office life. Then silence. Then a soft, oh. Not what you want to hear from the man who's managed your money for 15 years. How long? I asked. Jane, there were withdrawals over many years. Transfers. David always assured me you were aware. Legally, as co-owner. How long? He cleared his throat. Approximately 19 years. The first transfer was right after your grandmother's inheritance cleared. I sank into a chair. 19 years. My Thanksgiving turkey wasn't even out of the oven when I realized this wasn't a sudden betrayal. This was a slow, careful carving of my life, slice by slice, for almost 2 decades. Where did it go, Charles? I kept my voice level. I was proud of that. I sounded like I was asking for a recipe, not the autopsy report on my marriage. Some into a separate account David opened. Some into what appears to be a real estate investment. He hesitated again. I could hear him deciding whether to lie to me. Say it, I said. At this point, I'd appreciate honesty more than politeness. A condominium, he said. In the city. Purchased in David's name 12 years ago. Maintained in cash. The utilities and HOA fees were being paid from your inheritance account. There are also credit card payments for travel, boutiques, restaurants, often in pairs to airline tickets, 2 spa packages, mostly billed to the card that earns rewards in your name. I closed my eyes. Of course, he used my points to fly his mistress to Cancun. Men like Vid love efficiency. Is the condo still in his name? I asked. Yes, good, I said. Let him keep it. He'll need somewhere to sleep when the mistress changes the locks. If you're listening and your heart just sank because you recognize something, ladies, I want you to hear this part clearly. I did not collapse. I did not beg. I did not call him sobbing and ask why. You know why? Because at that moment, I understood something important. He had been cheating on me for 19 years. I had been cheating on myself for longer. I'd been cheating myself out of respect, out of independence, out of the career I once dreamed of. You don't know this part yet, so let me tell you. Before Lily was born, I was a chef. Not a home cook, though I do that too, and I do it very well. Thank you very much. I graduated from a culinary academy at 23 with honors and blisters all over my hands. I worked in a little restaurant downtown that nobody had heard of back then, the kind of place with a 10-table dining room, handwritten menus, and a chef who threw pans when the béarnaise broke. I loved it. The heat, the chaos, the ballet of the line on a busy Saturday night. My life was burns and cuts, and the first time someone sent a bottle of champagne back to the kitchen for me because the dessert made them cry. Then I got pregnant with Lily. Vid said all the right things. We can figure it out. Do what makes you happy. We'll make it work. But reality has a way of tripping over your pretty phrases. 2 years in, after daycare bills and opposite schedules and too many nights where Lily fell asleep without seeing either of her parents, the pressure started to build. You're exhausted, he told me one night while I was literally falling asleep standing up at the stove. We don't need the money that badly. My career is really taking off. Why don't you take a step back until things settle down? Just until things settle down. That's what he said. I stepped back. I quit the restaurant. And funny thing, life never settled down. His career did take off, because he wasn't up at 3 in the morning sterilizing bottles or sewing Halloween costumes or making dinosaur cupcakes for second-grade bake sales. I told myself I didn't mind. After all, I still cooked. I made elaborate dinners at home. I hosted holidays. I baked birthday cakes with 3 layers and perfect frosting. When my friends said, "Jane, you should have your own restaurant," I laughed it off. My dream got smaller and smaller until it fit inside my kitchen, and then inside his narrative of who I was allowed to be. The good wife, the good mother, the safe pair of hands, all while he used those same hands to sign away my inheritance to a woman who got the vacations and the secret apartment and the hotel spa packages. When I hung up with Charles, I didn't rage. I didn't throw things. I put the phone down, walked to the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. "Okay," I said to the woman in the glass. "He stole 19 years. You're not giving him 20. I called John next, my son, not the millionaire under the bridge, the other one. The one who'd shouted at me the night before like I'd just personally pushed his father out the door. He didn't pick up. Straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's John. You know what to do." "John," I said after the beep, my voice calm. "Your father has been cheating on me for almost 20 years. He used my inheritance to pay for his mistress's apartment and vacations. When you're ready to talk to me like a son instead of a prosecutor, you can call. Until then, enjoy Thanksgiving. I won't be answering if you call to yell. Goodbye." I hung up before my courage could evaporate. I didn't bother with Lily. She'd told me not to cry. That was enough for now. Then I did something that might sound strange. I called the number on John Steward's business card. Steward. That's how he answered. No hello, just a short, clipped Steward. Like he was in the middle of 3 deals and a hostile takeover. "Mr. Steward, this is Jane. From last night." Under the bridge, there was a beat of silence. Then his voice softened. "Jane with the turkey and the peppers. That's me," I said. "I hope you're not calling security. I just wanted to ask if your job offer was real or if it was just something people say when their blood sugar spikes from good food." He chuckled. It was a low sound, rusty, like it hadn't been used much. "I don't hire people under the influence of stuffing," he said. But yes, it was real. My staff is still talking about that turkey. And the mashed potatoes. And those peppers, what did you put in them? "Trade secret," I said automatically, and then I surprised myself by smiling. "You said personal chef. You were serious?" "I don't say things I don't mean, Jane. I built an entire empire on people believing that. I have 3 chefs rotating through my kitchen and I still eat cereal for dinner half the week. Yesterday was the first time in months I had food that tasted like someone gave a damn about the person eating it." His words hit me harder than he probably intended. I swallowed. "And what exactly does a personal chef for a millionaire do?" I asked. "Cook," he said. "Plan menus. Come with me when I travel sometimes. Manage the house kitchen. I have guests. I host events. I like to feed people. I just don't like the food. How many hours? Full time. Generous benefits if you care about that." I laughed. At the moment, I care about anything that isn't my husband. He was quiet for a heartbeat. So he really left. Yesterday, between the turkey and the cranberry sauce. "I'm sorry," John said. And the way he said it, I believed him. "Then let me make you a counteroffer." "A counteroffer?" I repeated. "To what? Divorce?" "To despair," he said. "Come in on Monday. Bring whatever you cooked last night, if there's any left. We'll talk terms. If we don't like each other after an hour, we'll shake hands and you'll never have to see me again. But something tells me we're both due for a little reinvention." The word sat in the air between us like a dare. Reinvention. When was the last time anyone thought I could reinvent anything other than leftovers? "All right," I said. "Monday." Now, if you're sitting there thinking, "Jane, how could you trust a stranger like that?" I hear you. I wouldn't recommend running off with every millionaire who hugs you under a bridge. Some of them probably bite. But here's the thing. I didn't trust him. Not yet. I trusted myself for the first time in a very long time. I trusted the part of me that used to walk into a packed restaurant kitchen and say, "I've got the line tonight, move." I trusted the part of me that packed up a whole Thanksgiving dinner and took it to people who needed it more than my ungrateful family. I trusted the part of me that, even with my heart in shreds, had managed to season the stuffing perfectly. So Monday morning, I put on my favorite black slacks, the ones that still made me feel like I had a shape, a crisp white blouse, and the only pair of heels I owned that didn't make me want to amputate my feet. I packed samples of my food into containers, a portion of turkey and gravy, mashed potatoes, 2 peppers, a slice of pumpkin pie with bourbon whipped cream. I paused by the fridge, looking at the photos held up by magnets. Lily at 6, missing her front teeth. John at 12, holding a baseball bat twice his size. Vid with his arm around me at our 25th anniversary party, grinning like he hadn't just drained my accounts. I took those photos down. I didn't throw them away. Not yet. I just put them in a drawer. Sometimes, ladies, the first act of rebellion is as small as clearing your own refrigerator door. John Steward lived in a glass palace on a hill. That's what it looked like anyway. When my Uber pulled up to the wrought iron gate, the guard checked John's list, called up to the house, and waved me through. As we drove up the long, winding driveway lined with bare oaks and careful landscaping, my stomach flipped. Relax, I muttered to myself. You're here to feed him, not marry him. The house itself was all clean lines and big windows that probably needed their own cleaning staff. Inside, everything was white, beige, or some expensive shade of gray that had a name like Dove Whisper. A woman in a black dress with a clipboard greeted me at the door. Miss Miller? Yes, Mr. Steward is expecting you in the small dining room. She smiled like we were about to discuss art or politics, not my entire future. May I take your coat? I handed it over and followed her through hallways that smelled faintly of lemon oil and money. We passed one kitchen white marble, stainless steel, enough space to host a wedding reception, and then another, larger, gleaming one where a chef in pristine whites was slicing something with surgical precision. I recognized the look on his face, boredom. I'd seen it in 100 professional kitchens. The look of a man who could plate a perfect meal and not care one bit who was eating it. The small dining room was roughly the size of my entire first floor. John stood by the window, looking out at the valley. He turned when I walked in, and for a moment, I saw him as the world saw him. Tall, silver-haired, well-cut suit, a face that used to smile easily and hadn't in a long time. Then he smiled at me, just a little, and I saw the man under the headlines. Jane, he said, come in, sit down, tell me what you've brought me. I arranged the containers on the table, suddenly shy. Leftover Thanksgiving. Sorry, I know that doesn't sound glamorous. I hate glamorous food, he said. It always looks like jewelry and tastes like punishment. I laughed, the tension easing. I heated the plates in his microwave, not ideal, but I worked with what I had and plated everything as nicely as possible. He took one bite of the turkey and closed his eyes. Then another of the mashed potatoes. Then a forkful of pepper, the filling rich with rice, meat, herbs, and a little secret I'd learned from my grandmother. He put his fork down and stared at me. How long were you a chef? He asked. I blinked. How did you? People don't cook like this by accident. Since my 20s, I admitted. Before kids. Before life. I see, he said quietly. For a moment, his gaze felt like an X-ray machine. And since then, I shrugged. Birthday parties. PTA fundraisers. A lot of family holidays. Yesterday was my last one, though. His jaw tightened. Your husband really was a fool. Apparently, he was more creative than that, I said. He built an entire second life on my dime. I would almost be impressed if I wasn't the idiot investor. John's mouth twitched. You're taking this remarkably well. Oh, don't worry, I said lightly. I have my moments. I screamed into a dish towel this morning so the neighbors wouldn't call the police. But crying isn't going to refill my accounts. Or my dignity. He leaned back, studying me. Good. I don't hire people who enjoy feeling sorry for themselves. I ruined my first marriage that way. My wife and I took turns playing the victim until we forgot how to be partners. There it was, his crack in the armor. Good. I didn't want a perfect man. Perfect men are just better at hiding their mess. So, I said, folding my hands on the table, what does this job pay? He smiled. Straight to business. I like that. I'll have my assistant send you an offer this afternoon, but in broad strokes, salary in the low 6 figures, health insurance, retirement contributions, performance bonuses, housing, if you ever want it. I have a guest house no one uses except my lonely lawn furniture. I nearly choked. 6 figures? For cooking? For this cooking? Absolutely. He gestured at his plate. Jane, I've paid more than that for consultants who only gave me heartburn. I stared at him, at the suit, at the view out the window, at the life he was casually handing me like it was a bowl of sugar. I need to be honest with you, I said finally. I'm in pieces right now. My husband left yesterday. I just found out he robbed me. My children are mad at me for not chaining myself to his ankles. I don't know if I'm exactly stable. He nodded slowly. Good. Stable people bore me. You're not here to be a decorative object, Jane. You're here to work, to bring life into this mausoleum, and maybe, if we're lucky, to figure out what comes after being in pieces. He met my eyes. I've been in pieces for a long time too. Something in his voice settled in my chest. Recognition. 2 strangers standing at completely different ends of life's spectrum, both showing each other their cracked edges. Okay, I said. Send the offer. I'll look it over. But I'll warn you now, I have conditions. John raised an eyebrow. Such as? No screaming in the kitchen. No throwing plates. I don't care how rich you are. I dodge enough emotional projectiles at home. I won't do it at work. Agreed, he said promptly. I need my own knives, I added. Good ones. Done. I won't cancel my commitments at the shelter under the bridge. Thursday nights are mine. He hesitated. We'll work around it. Or I'll sponsor the shelter and we'll serve your food there properly instead of out of plastic containers. That one hit me right in the heart. I swallowed. And one more. Yes? If my kids call, I might not answer. I might change my number. I might disappear from my old life for a while. I need an employer who doesn't expect me to play happy family hostess on command. John's expression softened. Jane, you can disappear as much as you need to. I'm very familiar with the need to vanish. He stood and held out his hand. So, do we have a trial run? I looked at his hand, at my own, at the faint red marks from where I'd clutched the carving knife yesterday, standing at my kitchen counter while my husband packed his life into a suitcase. Then I reached out and shook his hand. Trial run, I said, but if your fancy friends don't like my peppers, I reserve the right to walk out and start a food truck. His eyes lit up. If my fancy friends don't like your peppers, I'll buy you the truck myself. That night, I went home to my too quiet house with a draft offer in my email and the ghost of John's handshake still tingling in my palm. Lily had texted a heart emoji sometime during the day. No words. No apology for ditching Thanksgiving. Just a little red symbol she probably sent to half her contacts. John, the younger one, had called twice and hung up without leaving a message. I stared at the unlit porch light, at the wreath still hanging on the door from last year, dried and brittle. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and stood in the dark entryway. There, in the silence, something inside me finally shifted. This house had seen almost 30 years of my life. Toddler tantrums, birthday parties, make-up kisses, late-night whispered arguments in the kitchen when the kids were asleep. My dreams shrunk and hung on its walls like the family portraits. But it wasn't my prison. It was my starting line. I walked straight to the calendar hanging on the fridge. Thanksgiving was circled in orange marker. Christmas was circled in red, with little doodled snowflakes Lily drew when she was 10. I uncapped a black marker and drew a thick line through Christmas. Not this year, I said softly. Not this year would I cook for people who saw me as a service. Not a human being. Not this year would I stand at the stove while my children scheduled me in like a haircut. Christmas would not find me in this house, basting a turkey for ghosts. I didn't know yet where I'd be. All I knew was this: by the time Christmas lights went up on my street, Jane Miller would not be the same woman who watched her husband walk out the door between the turkey and the cranberry sauce. And if my children decided to come home expecting the same old holiday, the same old mother waiting with open arms and a full table, well, let's just say they were in for a surprise. The first thing I did after drawing that black line through Christmas was surprisingly simple. I bought a suitcase, not a cheap one from the discount bin, Not a hand-me-down from my sister, not one of Vid's old business travel relics. A new one, navy blue, hard shell, wheels that slid like butter, and a handle that clicked into place with a satisfying little snap. It felt ceremonial, almost sacred, rolling it out of the store. "Where are you off to?" the cashier had asked, trying to make polite conversation. "Forward," I said. She laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. The job offer from John Steward came that afternoon just like he promised. 6 figures, health insurance, retirement plan, stock options, a bonus structure that made me wonder if I'd accidentally been offered a role as CFO instead of someone who makes souffle. I sat at the kitchen table in my too-quiet house and read the email 3 times. Then I did something that would have made the old Jane break out in hives. I wrote back with edits. "Dear Mr. Steward," I typed, "thank you for the generous offer. I'm excited about the prospect of working together. I would, however, like to suggest a few modifications. I asked for slightly more salary. I asked for guaranteed time off around my volunteer work. I asked for a small professional development budget, cooking classes, conferences, travel to food festivals." I hovered over the send button, that old familiar guilt rising. "Don't be difficult, Jane. Don't ask for too much. Be grateful anyone wants you at all." I thought of my joint account balance, $2,137. I hit send. His reply came 10 minutes later. "Done. See revised offer attached. J. No haggling. No guilt trip paragraphs about tight budgets. No, we're like a family here. Code for will pay you in emotional manipulation. Just done." I signed. Before I could dive into my new life, there was one last errand to run in the old one. I hired a lawyer. The woman came recommended by a neighbor who'd watched her husband move out to find himself with his yoga instructor. She was in her late 40s, sharp bob haircut, navy suit, nails short and unpolished. Her name was Pat, and she shook my hand like she planned to drag me out of a burning building. "Jane," she said after I'd laid out the basics, "I won't sugarcoat this. He's been siphoning money from you for nearly 20 years. Legally, you're entitled to half of all marital assets, including that condo. Emotionally, you're entitled to a bonfire." "I don't want the condo," I said. "I have no interest in living in his lies." "You don't have to live in it," she replied calmly. "You can sell it, rent it, turn it into a shelter. But it's an asset, and we don't throw assets away because men make bad choices in them." I liked her immediately. Over the next hour, she walked me through the steps: financial disclosure, forensic accounting, a formal separation. It was like looking at an X-ray of a body you thought you knew, suddenly seeing all the broken bones that had healed crooked. "Do you want to know the exact dates?" she asked at one point, flipping through the bank statements. "What do you mean?" "The condo mortgage, the big charges, the trips. We can line them up against your life events. Some people need to see it. Some people don't." I paused. Part of me wanted to say no, why pour salt into wounds already bleeding? But another part of me, the part that had gone under a bridge in the freezing cold, rather than sit home and cry, leaned forward. "Show me." She spread the papers out. "Condo purchased 12 years ago," she said, "right after your son's high school graduation. See? That week. Down payment here. Furniture charges here. Weekend at a resort 2 weeks later based on the charge description. That's a couple's massage, by the way." My stomach clenched. "The weekend I drove Lily to college," I said quietly. "He said he couldn't take time off, but he'd visit her later." She nodded. "Trip to Paris 9 years ago. 2 first-class tickets. That was the same month you had your gallbladder surgery. He signed these charges the day after you were discharged from the hospital." I remembered that day. The pain, the way he'd brought me store-bought soup and said, "I'm swamped with work, Jane, try not to need too much." He'd needed 2 first-class tickets more. "And this," she said, tapping a line about 8 years back, "looks like a significant transfer from your inheritance account. The same week your mother died." I closed my eyes. "Enough," I said. I didn't need to know any more. The specifics didn't change the general truth. While I had been giving birth, healing, grieving, celebrating, and holding our family together with casseroles and calendars, He had been skimming my love into someone else's bathtub. Pat watched my face carefully. "You know what I see when I look at these?" she asked. "A financial massacre? I see a woman who has been subsidizing two households with her silence," she said. "You didn't know the numbers, but you knew something. You just pushed it down. So here's where we start, Jane. We stop pushing things down." She slid one more paper across the desk. "This is authorization for me to contact the bank, get full records, and put a freeze on any remaining joint accounts until we sort it out. It may not be much, but we're not letting him drain the last drops while we're talking." I signed, and just like that, for the first time in 29 years, I took a financial step without asking permission. My first day working for John Steward, I woke up before my alarm. You know that feeling when you're a little kid and you're going on a field trip? Backpack packed, shoes by the door, the world suddenly bigger than your street. That's how I felt, at 58, putting on my crisp chef's coat. It had been a long time since I'd worn one. My arms had a little more softness now, my waistline had seen better days, and my feet complained more loudly. But when I buttoned it up, something in me clicked into place. "Oh," I said to my reflection, "there you are." I tied my hair back, slipped on my sensible shoes, grabbed my new suitcase filled not with clothes yet, but with knives, spices, and my grandmother's battered recipe notebook, and headed out the door. No one kissed me goodbye. No one asked what was for dinner. The only person who cared where I was going was me. And John Steward. If his house had seemed imposing the first time, the second time it felt less like a museum, more like a theater waiting for the show to start. His assistant, Mara the woman with the clipboard, met me at the door again, but this time she smiled like she was genuinely glad to see me. "Welcome back, Miss Miller." "Jane," I corrected gently. "Or Chef, if you must." Her smile widened. "Chef Jane, then." The staff hasn't stopped talking about that turkey. In the kitchen, the bored chef was gone. In his place was an empty, gleaming space and a note on the counter. "They quit when I told them I'd found someone better." Dramatic exit. Very cinematic. "Kitchen is yours." "Jay," I snorted. Out of habit, I started my inspection. Fridge, pantry, freezers, knives, pans. The equipment was top of the line, but the food, well, it was all there, but it was soulless. Prepped vegetables, vacuum-sealed proteins, sauces in labeled squeeze bottles. The kind of kitchen that could turn out 100 identical plates and never remember a single face that ate them. I rolled up my sleeves. "Time to give this mausoleum a heartbeat," I muttered. He found me 2 hours later with flour on my cheek, 3 stockpots bubbling, and bread dough rising under a damp towel. "Is that yeast I smell?" he asked, stepping into the kitchen like a man approaching a sacred altar. "Among other things," I said. "I took the liberty of throwing out half your prepped stuff. It was all vacuum-sealed and lifeless." "No offense." "Offense taken," he said solemnly, "by the vacuum sealer. I, however, am delighted." "What's on the menu?" "For lunch, something civilized," I said. "Roasted tomato soup, grilled cheese with 3 kinds of cheese, a shaved fennel salad so your cardiologist doesn't yell. For dinner, I'm thinking braised short ribs, creamy polenta, roasted carrots with honey and thyme, and a chocolate tart for dessert. If that's all right with your schedule, Mr. Millions." He raised both hands. "You're the boss in here. I'm just the man with the fork." The way he said it, no sarcasm, no ego, did something strange to my chest. "Sit," I said gruffly, waving him toward the little breakfast table off the kitchen. "You're in my way if you hover." He obeyed. As I worked, he watched not like a critic, but like someone seeing an artist unpack her paints for the first time. "Where did you learn that knife technique?" he asked at one point. "Culinary Academy, years ago." "And the soup, why are you roasting the tomatoes first?" "Because life is too short for bland tomatoes," I said. "You roast them, you build flavor. Like people, a little heat, and suddenly everything gets deeper." "That explains a lot," he murmured. "About what?" "About why newly divorced women are the most interesting people at any dinner party," he said dryly. I barked out a laugh. "If that's your idea of a pickup line, Mr. Steward, you might need to fire your PR team." He smiled. "Noted." Lunch turned into an impromptu tasting session. Mara appeared, drawn by the smell of soup, followed by 2 other staff members, his housekeeper, Rosa, and the groundskeeper, Dan. They hovered awkwardly in the doorway until I shoved bowls into their hands. "I don't believe in cooking for just one person," I said. "Eat or leave." They ate. The room filled with that particular kind of quiet that only happens when people are genuinely enjoying food. No small talk, just spoons scraping bowls and the occasional soft moan of appreciation. When we were done, Rosa wiped her eyes. "Reminds me of my mama's kitchen," she said. "I didn't know how much I missed this." "Get used to it," John said. "If Jane will have us, this is the new normal." He looked at me when he said it, and something warm flickered between us. Not romance, not yet. Something earlier. The sense of being seen. At the shelter under the bridge that Thursday, I arrived not as the woman who'd fled Thanksgiving, but as a working chef. I still wore my coat over my chef's jacket, but I could feel the difference in the way I carried myself. My heartbreak was still there, of course, but it had been joined by something stubborn and bright. Purpose. I had prepped more food than usual that afternoon at John's house, with his blessing. Huge trays of baked ziti, loaves of crusty bread, 2 enormous pots of vegetable soup. He'd offered to send a driver, but I insisted on doing the delivery myself. "These are my people," I told him. "I don't outsource this." He didn't argue. Under the bridge, the cold cut through my coat, but the warmth from the open trunk and the clatter of plastic forks made its own little pocket of heaven. "Hey, it's the turkey lady." One man grinned, recognizing me from Thanksgiving. "Tonight it's ziti," I said, "but if you behave, maybe turkey will make a comeback." As we handed out plates, a black SUV pulled up nearby. For a second, my heart stuttered. I thought of him showing up to claim some imaginary moral high ground. But it wasn't him. It was John. He stepped out, bundled in a wool coat, a hat pulled low over his silver hair. He looked comically out of place in his polished shoes and cashmere scarf, but he didn't hover by the car. He walked straight over, grabbed a crate of bread from my trunk, and got in line beside me. "Hi," he said simply. "What are you doing here?" I hissed under my breath. "Ladling soup." "Carrying bread," he said, passing out plates, trying not to get tomato sauce on my coat. "You? Don't you have, I don't know, a board meeting? A gala? A yacht to polish?" "Not tonight," he said. "Tonight I have this." He turned to the man in front of him. "Bread?" he asked. The man took a slice, eyeing John's expensive coat. "You lost?" he asked. "Finding my way," John replied. I couldn't help it. I smiled. After the rush, when most of the food was gone and people had retreated to their chosen corners under the bridge to eat, John and I stood by my car, our breath ghosting in the air. "You didn't have to come," I said. "I know. Why did you?" He glanced around at the fires in metal barrels, the huddled figures under blankets. "When my company went public," he said slowly, "I threw a party that cost more than this whole shelter's annual budget. The food was perfect, the champagne was endless, and I don't remember what anything tasted like." He looked at me. "I remember your turkey, Jane, and I remember that hug." I'm trying to follow the things that feel real these days. My throat tightened. "Well," I said gruffly, "realness comes with cold toes and tomato-stained gloves. Hope you're ready." He smiled. "I'll wear old shoes next time." Next time. Somewhere between the soup and the bread and the way he said, "next time," I realized something. My life was no longer orbiting around a man who left. It was slowly, tentatively, starting to build around a man who showed up. Now, you're probably wondering about my children. Where were Lily and John in all this? Had they suddenly awakened to the reality of what their father did? Had they called in tears, begging forgiveness? Oh, ladies, if only growth were that tidy. The first week after Thanksgiving, I didn't hear much from them. A few scattered texts from Lily, photos of her and Michael at a ski cabin, captioned with snowflake emojis. No apologies. No, "How are you, Mom?" Just a casual assumption that I would continue to exist in the background of her life. John sent nothing but a single angry text. "Dad says you lawyered up. This is insane. You're going to ruin him." I stared at that message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Old Jane would have explained. Old Jane would have written a novel. Sweetheart, you don't understand. Your father has been lying to me, stealing from me, living with another woman on my money. New Jane did something radically different. I deleted his message. Not unanswered. Not archiving it to read later. Deleted. If he wanted a relationship with me, he would come with something other than his father's talking points. As December rolled in, the world around me turned festive. Lights went up on my street. Christmas music played in every store. Neighbors waved from their driveways as they wrestled inflatable snowmen onto their lawns. I baked less at home now. My energy went into John's kitchen. I spent my days testing recipes, planning menus for small dinners and business meetings, watching him slowly relax over actual food. He ate everything I put in front of him, and he listened. Between bites, he told me stories about his childhood, the mother who worked 2 jobs, the father who drank, the first time he realized money could be a shield and a weapon. In return, I told him about culinary school, about the chef who'd thrown a sock pin across the kitchen and I'd caught it barehanded, impressed him enough that he bumped me to the hot line. We didn't talk much about our failed marriages at first. Those stories seeped in slowly, like stock simmering down. Sometimes, after dinner, we'd sit in the small living room off the kitchen, his favorite room, he said, because it felt least like a showpiece, and drink tea. One night, a week before Christmas, he asked, very quietly, "Do you miss him?" It startled me. Who? Your husband. Vid. I stared into my mug. I miss who I thought he was, I said eventually. I miss the version of him I built in my head and fed with compromise. I miss the man I thought would hold my hand when we were 80, even if he complained about my cooking being too salty. And the real man? John asked. I took a deep breath. The real man, I said, hasn't been my husband for a long time. I just didn't file the paperwork. He nodded slowly. And you? I asked. Do you miss your ex-wife? He smiled without humor. Which one? I raised an eyebrow. There were 2, he admitted. The first married me when I was poor and left me when I was never home. The second married me when I was rich and left me when I stopped trying to buy her. Do you still love them? I asked. Pieces of them, he said. Pieces of who I was with them. But love without respect is just nostalgia wearing perfume. I'm trying not to live in nostalgia anymore. We sat in silence for a moment. You know, I said, for a man with more money than some small countries, you're surprisingly self-aware. For a woman who just had her life blown up, he replied, you're surprisingly calm. Oh, don't worry, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. I still have my moments. Yesterday I cried in the walk-in fridge so I wouldn't water down the soup. He laughed. We looked at each other across the little table, 2 middle-aged people with knots in their hearts and new maps in their hands. Something was growing between us, not romance exactly, but the fertile ground where romance might someday take root. Not yet, but someday. Christmas drew closer, and the texts from my children started to shift. Lily, so, what's the plan for Christmas dinner, Mom? Michael's family does theirs on Christmas Eve, so we were thinking we'd come to you on the 25th. I'll bring dessert. No mention of Thanksgiving. No mention of how she'd chosen a new boyfriend over her mother's heartbreak. Just the assumption that I would be here. Waiting. Turkey in the oven, potatoes mashed, pain swallowed. John, I talked to Dad. He says you're blowing things out of proportion. We should all sit down at Christmas like adults instead of lawyering up. You know he's sorry. I felt anger fizz in my chest, hot and bright. Vid was sorry, all right. Sorry that I'd pierced the bubble. Sorry that I'd found the condo. Sorry that his double life had become an accounting problem. I drafted several replies to my kids. To Lily, sweetheart, there is no Christmas plan this year that involves me cooking while you pretend nothing happened. To John, I will sit down like an adult when you stop acting like a public defender for a guilty client. I didn't send those either. Instead, I sent a single group text. There will be no Christmas at my house this year. The door will be locked. If you want to talk to me, really talk, we can find a time in the new year. Until then, I hope you both have a peaceful holiday. Mom. I watched the little typing, Bubbles come and go. Lily, wait, what? Are you serious? John, this is childish, Mom. I put my phone on silent and slid it into a drawer. Let them stew. The day before Christmas Eve, John cornered me in the kitchen while I was up to my elbows in cookie dough. What are you doing for Christmas, Chef? He asked. Making sure my Netflix subscription still works, I said, ignoring my doorbell. Possibly eating Chinese takeout in my pajamas. He frowned. That sounds bleak. It sounds peaceful, I corrected. He hesitated. Come with me, he said suddenly. I looked up. Where? A shareholders' brunch. My cabin, he said, up in the mountains. I usually spend Christmas there alone. It was easier than dealing with invitations and expectations. I chop wood, pretend I know what I'm doing with a fireplace, and eat terrible frozen lasagna. And you want me to, what? Critique your lasagna technique. I want you to cook whatever you want, he said simply. And I want company that doesn't want anything from me except another slice of pie. My first instinct was to say no, to insist I needed to stay home, to be available in case my kids had a last-minute attack of conscience. Then I pictured it, sitting in my dark living room, refreshing my phone, scrolling through photos of other people's Christmases while my own children clinked glasses somewhere else. No, you realize if I come, there will be no frozen lasagna, I said. Once I lay hands on that kitchen, there's no going back. Jane, he said, eyes crinkling at the corners, if you rescue me from frozen lasagna, I might propose. Don't joke about that, I said quickly, then blushed. I mean, he held up his hands. Too soon. I know. It was a figure of speech. Come as my chef, my friend. He hesitated, searching for the word. My fellow citizen of the land of the betrayed. I thought of my empty house, my locked door, my children expecting the old script. All right, I said, but I'm packing my own knives and my ugly Christmas sweater. Your mountain better be ready. His smile could have lit the tree at Rockefeller Center. The cabin was not, as I'd expected, some sprawling, glass-walled chalet. It was cozy, wood beams, worn leather sofa, a stone fireplace with soot stains that said he really did use it, not just for show. The kitchen was small but functional. The view out the back window overlooked pines dusted with snow and, in the distance, mountains like folded blue velvet. This is where you run away to? I asked, dropping my suitcase by the door. This is where I remember I'm a person and not just a brand, he said. I walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and laughed. Tell me you did not seriously plan to feed yourself on this. He looked sheepish. Frozen lasagna, sad-looking lettuce, half-empty jar of pickles, and a bottle of mustard, I said, cataloging the contents. John, for a rich man, you eat like an underpaid grad student. That's why I hired you, he said lightly. Fix my life, starting with the refrigerator. I shooed him out of the kitchen and took stock of the pantry better, at least. Pasta, beans, rice, canned tomatoes, flour, sugar, spices. Enough to build something beautiful. As I planned Christmas Eve dinner, I felt something unfurl in me. This wasn't cooking as performance for an ungrateful family. This was creation, expression. I kneaded bread dough and thought about the girl I'd been at 23, arms aching from whipping egg whites, dreaming of owning my own restaurant. I'd lost her somewhere between diaper changes and school lunches. Apparently, she'd just been waiting at the back of a Millionaire's pantry. That night, we ate by the fire roasted chicken with garlic and lemon, potatoes crisped in duck fat, green beans blistered in a cast iron pan with almonds, fresh bread still warm. John groaned after his first bite. If you keep this up, he said, I'm going to have to start jogging. You can just build a treadmill into your next merger, I said. He chuckled. After dinner, we played cards like two old friends. We listened to vinyl records, actual records, with crackles and hiss. We talked about everything and nothing. At one point, as I beat him mercilessly at gin rummy, I realized something startling. I was happy. Not pretend happy for the kids, smile for the camera, happy. Not at least the turkey turned out well, happy. Genuine, deep, fizzy happiness. And it wasn't because of a man. It was because of me. Because I'd walked out of the house of my own misery. Because I'd taken a job that used my gifts. because I'd drawn a line through Christmas and written my own plans. John was an unexpected miracle along the way, a companion, a mirror, maybe, someday, more, but the engine of my joy was mine. On Christmas morning, my phone lit up like a slot machine. Missed calls, texts, notifications. I'd left it on the kitchen counter, turned face down, determined not to let other people's expectations dictate my day. But while the coffee brewed and the cinnamon rolls baked, curiosity got the better of me. I flipped it over. Lily, Mom, we just got to the house and the door is locked. Where are you? I told you we were coming. We brought Michael's parents. Immediately followed by, this is really not cool. Are you trying to punish us? John, Mom, I'm at the house. Are you okay? The cars are gone. Did you go somewhere? This is ridiculous. We have nowhere to eat. Then, a separate message from an unknown number. I tapped it. Mrs. Miller, this is Nancy from next door. Your kids are sitting on your porch. It's snowing. Do you want me to let them in? I don't see your car. I imagined it, my almost 30-year-old children, bundled up, arms full of gifts and expectations, standing in front of my locked door like trick-or-treaters at the wrong house. For a moment, guilt rose, old and familiar. You're a mother, Jane. Mothers wait. Mothers accommodate. Mothers cook even when they're broken. Then I remembered my son's voice on Thanksgiving, yelling, "What kind of woman are you?" I remembered my daughter's breezy, "Don't cry, we'll talk tomorrow," and how tomorrow had stretched into silence until dessert plans were involved. I poured myself a cup of coffee, took a deep breath, and texted Nancy back. Hi, Nancy. You're very kind to ask. Please tell them I'm safe and spending Christmas elsewhere. You may let them wait in your house if you'd like, but do not give out any information about my location. Merry Christmas. Then, in the group chat with my children, I told you there would be no Christmas at my house this year. I'm spending the holiday somewhere peaceful. When you are ready to apologize for how you spoke to me and to acknowledge what your father did, I will be here, not as your cook, as your mother. Until then, I hope you have a meaningful day. Mom. I hit send. My hands shook not from fear, but from the sheer weight of breaking a decades-long pattern. Behind me, I felt rather than heard John come into the kitchen. Everything all right? He asked gently. Yes, I said. Everything is finally all right. He read my face, the phone in my hand, the little storm of emotions. How are they? He asked. Confused, I said. Hungry. Apparently Michael's parents are standing on my porch too. Part of me feels bad for them. The other part thinks, you raised a man who thinks it's okay for his girlfriend to abandon her mother on Thanksgiving. So maybe a little porch time will build character. He chuckled. Do you regret not telling them where you were going? I thought about it. No, I said. For the first time in my life, I picked me. They'll survive one Christmas without my sweet potatoes. He was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped closer, very carefully, like approaching a skittish animal. Jane, he said softly, I am very proud of you. I blinked, caught off guard. You don't even know me well enough to be proud. I protested weakly. I know enough, he said. I know what it costs to walk away from a script everyone expects you to read. I know what it feels like when the silence after you do is louder than any applause. My eyes stung. Damn you, I muttered, swiping at a tear. I spent decades being the only person in the room who cried. I refused to start again. He smiled. Coffee. I handed him a mug, grateful for the ordinary gesture. We ate cinnamon rolls by the fire. I told him stories about the kids as toddlers, Lily's obsession with glitter, John's fear of the dark. He told me about his own daughter, Emma, who lived across the country and still insisted on sending him stick figure drawings of the two of them even though she was 32 and a lawyer now. And do you spend Christmas with her? I asked. Sometimes, he said. We had an agreement this year that she'd go skiing with friends and we'd do a big New Year's instead. She insisted I find a life in the meantime. He gave me a sidelong look. I'd say I followed instructions fairly well. There it was again, that quiet, gentle thread tying us together. We were two people who had loved and been left. Two parents who had messed up and been messed up by their children. Two adults trying to learn that choosing themselves didn't mean abandoning everyone else, it meant finally stepping onto solid ground. Later that afternoon, as the snow began to fall thicker outside the cabin windows, my phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name on the screen. Vid. My thumb hovered over the decline button. Then, curiosity aided by a healthy dose of righteous fury won. I answered. Jane, he said. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered, stretched. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning. There's a court document on my fridge with the word served on it, I said dryly. I was under the impression you were aware of my continued existence. He huffed out something that might have been a humorless laugh. I'm at the house, he said. The kids were standing outside like idiots. What is this? Nancy says you told her you're somewhere peaceful. Are you with someone? Ah, there it was. The flicker of jealousy, the entitlement. He'd slept in another woman's bed for 2 decades without losing a wink of sleep, but the idea of me out of his line of sight rattled him. Why do you ask? I replied, knowing full well why. You're my wife. Legally, I said. For the moment, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, you abdicated a long time ago. He blew out a breath. Can we not do this over the phone? Let me in, Jane. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Oh, I'm sure you can, I said. You've always been very creative. But I'm not at the house, Vid, and I wouldn't let you in if I were. A pause. Are you with him? He asked. That rich guy, the one from the news. Steward. Is that where my wife ran off to? To cook for a billionaire? I looked around the cozy cabin, at the fire, at the mug John had just set beside my elbow, at the dough rising on the counter. No, I said calmly. Your wife didn't run off anywhere. She died on Thanksgiving, right after you told her you'd been lying to her for 20 years. The woman you're talking to now is someone else entirely. Jane, I know about the condo. I cut in. I know about the trips. I know about the inheritance you siphoned off for your mistress's spa days. So unless you've discovered a time machine, there's nothing you can say that will make this look like anything other than what it is. And what's that? Economic abuse, I said. Infidelity. Exploitation. The only thing I haven't decided yet is whether you're more pathetic or more predictable. For a second, there was silence. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. She left, he said. My grip tightened on the phone. The mistress, he said. She left, took her things from the condo, changed her number. I went there last night after your lawyer called. There was a note on the counter. She said she couldn't do this anymore. That she never signed up to be with a married man whose wife is trying to ruin him. Jane, she's gone. Everything I did. And she. He trailed off. I closed my eyes. There it was, the collapse. He'd gambled my future on a woman who had always been playing a shorter game than he realized. My heart did a strange thing then. It didn't pity him exactly, but it did register the sad little irony. He'd traded a woman who would have sat beside him in sickness and poverty for one who fled at the first whiff of complication. You're surprised? I asked softly. You built a house on stolen money and lies, and you're shocked the interior decorator walked out? I made a mistake, he said. I made a lot of mistakes, but we can fix this. We can sell the condo. We can. No, I said. We can't. Jane, please, he said, and there was a desperate edge to his voice I'd never heard before. The kids are furious. My accounts are frozen. They're talking about subpoenas at work. I need you. You can stop this. Call off the lawyers. We can figure it out between us. You don't have to do this. You don't have to take everything from me. I looked out the window. Snow falling, slow and steady. John at the table, looking at me. Concern etched in his face, but not eavesdropping, not trying to grab the phone, not inserting himself into a conversation that wasn't his. You already took everything from me, Vid, I said quietly. You just did it so slowly I didn't notice until the account balance hit 0. That's not fair. Oh, I promise you, I said, a calm settling over me like fresh snow. Fairness is the only thing I'm interested in now. Jane, my lawyer will be in touch, I said. And if you're smart, you'll tell the kids the truth before they find out from anyone else. Because when they finally realize what you've really done, they won't just be angry at me for locking a door. They'll be angry at you for lighting our home on fire. He was breathing hard on the other end. You can't just throw away almost 30 years, he said, voice breaking. You can't. Watch me, I said. And I hung up. My hand was shaking, but not from fear, from the sheer, wild exhilaration of finally ending a conversation on my terms. When I looked up, John was watching me, not with pity, with something fiercer, respect, maybe a little awe. Well, he said softly, that sounded definitive. It was, I said. How do you feel? I thought about it, like I just stepped out of a burning house and realized my favorite cookbook was already in the car. He laughed, delighted. Then, very slowly, he crossed the room and held out his hand, palm up, not grabbing, not pulling, just offering. I stared at it for a moment, my heart thumping. Then I put my hand in his. Warm, steady, no secrets hiding in the grip. For a moment, we just stood there, two people holding hands in a cabin in the snow, while the ghosts of our old lives howled outside. I didn't know exactly what we were yet. Employer and employee, friends, co-survivors. But I knew one thing. Whatever I was building now, I was building on truth. And that's when my phone buzzed again, one new message from my son, John. Mom, Dad told us everything. About the condo. About the money. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? I looked at the screen, at the shaking little apology. For the first time in my life, my child was asking if I was willing to talk, not demanding that I listen. I squeezed John Steward's hand, bracing myself, because the next conversation I was about to have with my son, with my daughter, with the shattered little family I'd held together for so long. That one was going to decide who I became next. If this were a movie, here's how the next part would go. My son would text, "Can we talk?" I'd say yes. We'd have one cathartic phone call. Everybody would cry. Everyone would understand everything. And then we'd all sit down at some sunlit brunch, healed. Real life is slower, messier, but it's also more honest, if you let it be. I stared at that message. Mom, Dad told us everything. About the condo. About the money. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? I could feel John Steward's hand warm around mine, grounding me. You don't have to answer right now, he said quietly. Or at all. Being a mother doesn't mean you're on call 24/7 for everyone else's emergencies. I breathed in, out. I thought of my boy, 8 years old, clutching my hand in the dark movie theater because the dragon on screen was too loud. I thought of that same boy, 28, shouting at me like I was the one who'd walked out. I also thought of my lawyer's face when she said, "Stop pushing the truth down." I want to talk, I said at last. But I want to talk as the woman I am now, not the doormat they grew up with. So I texted back, "Yes, I'll call you in an hour." I put the phone face down on the table. 1 hour? John asked. I need to finish rising, I said. He glanced at the dough on the counter. The bread? I shook my head. Me? That hour, I didn't pace. I didn't rehearse speeches. I didn't cry. I chopped onions for beef stew. I fed the fire. I washed dishes. I listened to an old Billie Holiday record John put on, the crackle of the vinyl mixing with the sound of snow hitting the windows. Every few minutes, my brain tried to go back to that old channel. What will he say? Will he blame you? Will you cave? And every few minutes, I reminded myself of a new rule. I am not applying for the position of good mother anymore. I already held it. For years. Without pay. When the hour was up, I took my phone to the small guest room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. I called my son. He picked up on the first ring. Mom? His voice was different. Not the hard-edged accusation from Thanksgiving. Not the clipped annoyance from his text. There was a crack in it now. I'm here, I said. You wanted to talk. I'm so sorry, he blurted. Mom, I didn't know. Dad told us some of it, but it was like listening to a stranger. The condo, the trips, the money. Why didn't you tell us sooner? There it was. The question people always ask women. Why didn't you say anything? As if the silence is the crime, not the wound that caused it. I didn't tell you, I said slowly, because I didn't know. Not like this. I felt something was wrong for a long time, but every time I asked him, he smiled and held my hand and told me not to worry. And I believed him, because I wanted to, because I was tired, because he was your father and I thought I owed it to you to keep the family together. On the other end, I heard a soft sound, like a stifled sob. My son, trying not to cry like a little boy. I yelled at you, he said hoarsely, on Thanksgiving. I screamed at you like you'd burned down our house, and all the while he was the one. Yes, I said. You did. I was wrong, he said, the words tumbling out. I was so wrong. He told Lily and me you'd given up, that you'd pushed him away, that you wouldn't fight for the marriage. He made it sound like you'd stopped loving him. I let the silence stretch for a beat. And did it ever occur to you? I asked, not cruelly, just clearly, to ask me what happened, before you decided who the villain was. His breath hitched. No, he whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. There's no excuse. I acted like a child. A selfish, stupid child. I could have rushed in there. No, sweetheart, you were just confused. You didn't know. That's what I would have done once. But this new chapter of my life, it didn't have room for making everyone comfortable by erasing the truth. You did act like a child, I agreed calmly. But you don't have to stay one, he sniffed. I don't know how to make this right. You can't, I said. You can't put the money back. You can't unsay what you shouted at me. You can't unbreak my trust. But you can start by believing me, by not making what your father did about your feelings. There was a long pause. I do believe you, he said finally. I do. I feel like everything I knew about our family was a lie. Welcome to my Thanksgiving, I said dryly. He laughed through his tears, that broken little chuckle that sounded so much like when he'd fall off his bike and try to front like it didn't hurt. Mom, yes. Are you with someone? He asked it carefully, not with Dad's entitlement, but with a kind of tentative curiosity. I'm with myself, I said, for the first time in a long time. I have a new job. I have a cabin in the snow for Christmas. I have beef stew on the stove and music on the record player. And I have a friend who looks at me like I'm a human being, not a service appliance. A friend, he repeated. Yes. Is he nice to you? John asked after a moment. I thought of John Steward's hands carrying bread under the bridge. His eyes when he said, I am very proud of you. The way he'd watched me sign my contract like it was a win for him, too. He is, I said. He's very kind. And very honest. We're both learning. Okay, my son said quietly. You deserve that. I'm glad. I swallowed. Thank you. So what now? He asked. Can I see you? Can we talk more when you get back? Yes, I said. But I need you to understand something, John. I love you. That hasn't changed. Being your mother is one of the great joys of my life. But I won't go back to the way things were. I'm not going to be the woman everyone assumes will cook and smile and keep quiet. If you want a relationship with me, it will be between grown-ups, on mutual terms. I want that, he said, voice fierce. I don't know how to do it yet, but I want that. All right then, I said. We'll learn. We said goodbye. When I hung up, my heart felt bruised but also lighter. One child, beginning the slow walk back. One to go. Lily took longer. Of course she did. She texted that afternoon, but not with apology. With anger. I can't believe you left us on Christmas. You're acting crazy. Dad is a mess. John is freaking out. This isn't you, Mom. I stared at her words, my jaw tightening. This isn't you. That's what people say when the real you finally comes out and they don't like her as much as the doormat. I didn't respond. Not that day. Not the next one. Not the one after that. Instead, I poured my time into the kitchen, into conversations with John, into long walks in the snow where I let myself imagine, for the first time, a future that was mine. Something happened in that cabin, between the dough and the conversations and the quiet mornings with coffee. I stopped seeing myself as abandoned wife and started seeing myself as woman at a turning point. I didn't know yet what I was turning toward, but I knew what I was turning away from, and that was enough for now. When we came back from the cabin, the city seemed different. Maybe it was just me. The divorce process rolled forward, slow and relentless. Pat, my lawyer, was a force of nature. She ferreted out accounts I hadn't even known existed, confronted Vid's legal team with a calm, almost bored efficiency. 20 years, she said one afternoon, tapping a highlighted line on a spreadsheet. Our forensic accountant found transfers going back to full decades. Hotels, jewelry. She's very fond of a certain boutique brand, by the way. You could wallpaper your guest room with the receipts. 20 years, I repeated. The number sat in my chest like a stone. My daughter's entire life. He started cheating on you before she could walk, Pat said bluntly. He financed it with your grandmother's money. He's going to pay for that, one way or another. I realized then that the exact number 19 years, 20 didn't really matter. It was all one long betrayal, a marriage built on my devotion and his deception. Oddly, knowing the exact scale didn't crush me. It clarified me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't overdramatic or hysterical or any of those words men like to throw at women who stop swallowing their pain. I was finally awake. Meanwhile, my work with John became more in the obvious sense. My position as his personal chef morphed into something bigger, because apparently, if you feed a lonely millionaire real food and real honesty, he starts asking questions like, what would you do if you could build anything? The first time he asked, I waved him off. I've built plenty, I said. School lunches, bake sales, Thanksgiving spreads, PTA buffets. No, he interrupted gently. For you, Jane, not for everyone else. Not for the kids. Not for a husband who uses your savings as mistress money. For you. I stared at him. The idea was almost obscene. Spending money, energy, effort on something that wasn't about keeping other people comfortable. I don't know, I admitted. I haven't thought that way in a long time. Think about it, he said. Humor me. Call it a thought experiment. He'd ask again every few days in different forms. If you had your own restaurant, what would you serve? If you wrote a cookbook, what would the first chapter be called? If you could teach women one thing about cooking, what would it be? Little by little, the answers started to surface. I'd serve comfort food, I said one day. Not fancy foam nonsense. Real dishes. Things that smell like your grandmother's kitchen but look like they belong in a magazine. The first chapter would be called The Burner You Forgot You Turned Off, I said another day, about all the ways we turn our heat down to make other people comfortable. If I could teach women one thing, I said on a Thursday, chopping onions with ferocious precision, it would be that feeding yourself is not selfish. It's the baseline. You can't pour homemade soup from an empty pot. He listened. He always listened. We started spending time together outside the kitchen, casually at first. A walk around his property after dinner. A cup of coffee on the terrace before the day's chaos. An art exhibit where he needed someone with opinions who isn't afraid of canapés. Then one evening, about 3 months after Thanksgiving, he walked into the kitchen wearing a charcoal suit that fit him indecently well and said, I have a proposition. If it involves vacuum-sealed chicken, the answer is no, I said. He smiled. No chicken. A date. I nearly dropped the spoon I was holding. What? A date, he repeated. You, me, a restaurant where you're not allowed in the kitchen, a concert afterward, or a walk, or just dessert somewhere that isn't your own fridge at midnight. Oh, I said eloquently. You can absolutely say no, he added quickly. You're my employee. I'm your boss. There are power dynamics here I'm painfully aware of. But he trailed off, searching for the words. I enjoy you, Jane. Your mind, your humor, the way you talk to me like I'm a man and not a stock price. And I'd like to see what it feels like to sit across from you at a table where someone else brings the food. I opened my mouth to automatically recite the usual script. It's too soon. I'm too damaged. I don't even know how to date anymore. And then I remembered something I'd said to you. Yes, you. watching this, that I wasn't going to cheat on myself anymore. Did I want to sit across from this man, in clothes that weren't splattered with olive oil, and feel like a woman and not just a pair of working hands? Oh, yes. Yes, I heard myself say, but only if you can handle the fact that I'll probably critique the restaurant's menu. He grinned, relief flashing across his face. If you don't, I'll worry you've had a stroke. That first date was awkward, beautiful, gentle, but awkward. I stood in front of my closet that night and realized I owned exactly 3 categories of clothing: home mom, host a holiday, and funeral. Nothing in the romantic dinner with millionaire who knows your credit score and your trauma section. I cobbled something together: a simple navy dress that had survived the last decade, a shawl, earrings my grandmother left me. I put on a little mascara, a swipe of lipstick that made my mouth look bolder than I felt. When I walked downstairs at his house, he froze. "You look." He stopped, shook his head once, as if trying to recalibrate his vocabulary. "Beautiful. I am 58. My waistline is not what it was. My neck has that soft little wobble I used to judge on my own mother." But in that moment, under his gaze, I believed him. "Don't get used to it," I said lightly. "Tomorrow I'll be back in my compression socks." He laughed, offered his arm, and for the first time in more than 20 years, I walked out the door on a date that didn't feel like a performance. We talked about everything except my husband. We talked about music and books and why he secretly liked trashy reality TV. "They're all just badly behaved shareholders," he said. I told him about the time I dropped an entire tray of creme brulee and pretended it was deconstructed. He told me about the night he slept on the floor of his first office because he was afraid the bank would lock him out in the morning. When the waiter came, John ordered wine and then looked at me. "Do you feel comfortable drinking?" he asked. "We're both in weird places in our lives. I don't want to assume." No one had ever asked me that before. Vid had always just ordered what he wanted and expected me to keep up or keep quiet. "I'll have 1 glass," I said. "If it's good, it will be," John said. I asked around. "Apparently this place is second only to your kitchen. The food was excellent." I critiqued it anyway, because that's who I am. He teased me about it. I teased him about his terrible dessert choice. "If you voluntarily order panna cotta when molten chocolate cake is on the menu, I have questions." It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't violin swelling as we leaned in for some movie-perfect kiss. It was better. It was 2 grown people, both scarred, both scared, choosing to show up anyway. When he drove me home that night, not to my old house, but to a small apartment I'd rented downtown while the divorce slogged through court, he walked me to my door and didn't rush to close the distance. Instead, he said, "If this is where it stays for a while, I'm all right. I'm not in a hurry. I just like being around you." I looked up at him, the lines on his face, the tiredness in his eyes, the gentleness there too. "Thank you," I said, "for not trying to fix me or rush me. I tried that with my exes," he said dryly. "Didn't work. Turns out people aren't hostile takeovers." We both laughed. He kissed my cheek, nothing more, and when I closed the door behind me, I leaned against it, hand pressed over my heart. It wasn't racing like it had when I was 20. It was steady, present, alive. If you're wondering, what about the cheating husband? The mistress? The kids? Don't worry, they all come back into the story. Betrayal has long roots. About 6 months after Thanksgiving, the divorce was almost finalized. The settlement gave me back a substantial portion of what Vid had stolen, thanks to Pat and her team. The condo was on the market. His reputation at work had taken a hit. Turns out, embezzling your wife's inheritance for your girlfriend doesn't look great on the annual report. He showed up at one of the court-mandated financial mediation sessions looking older, smaller. The swagger was gone. His hair had more gray. There were deep grooves around his mouth. He tried, of course, to charm, to reminisce, to spin. "Remember our first apartment, Jane?" he said, while the lawyers shuffled papers. "The tiny kitchen? We used to dance in there while you stirred the sauce. We were so broke, but we were happy." I was happy. I corrected gently. You were planning your exit strategy. He flinched. I never stopped loving you, he said quietly. Love. Funny word, coming from someone who placed hidden cameras in bank accounts instead of trust in my hands. You stopped respecting me, I said. And love without respect is nostalgia. I'm not interested in nostalgia anymore. He looked down at his hands. The place isn't the same without you, he murmured. The kids, they're different, distant. They look at me like I'm a stranger. Well, I said. You are. His eyes filled in public, in front of the lawyers. The old me would have panicked, rushed to comfort, offered tissues. The new me sat still. I can't believe you won't even give this a chance, he said thickly. We have so much history. Yes, I said. We do. 20 years of you lying to my face while you spent my grandmother's money on hotel suites. I'm full up on history, Vid. I'm working on having a future, he swallowed. And this future, he said. It's with him? With Steward? My lawyer shifted, ready to object to whatever accusation was coming. I touched her arm, signaling her to let me handle it. My future, I said, looking him square in the eye, is with myself. If John is in it, it's because he treats me with more respect in one conversation than you did in the last decade. But here's the important part, Vid. I don't need him. I want him. That's the difference you never understood. He looked lost. Not enough to make me take him back. Just enough to make me realize how far apart we'd been for so long. He had married a woman who would sacrifice herself on the altar of family. He'd lost a woman who finally learned she didn't have to. When the settlement was signed, I walked out of that conference room lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because of the money, though getting my own back felt damn good, but because the invisible chains were finally off. Mrs. Vid Miller, dutiful wife, keeper of peace, absorber of blame. She was gone. All that was left was Jane. And the kids? They learned. Slowly, clumsily, imperfectly. My son came first. We had coffee, then dinner, then a long walk through the park where he asked questions that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. Were you happy, Mom, before all this? Sometimes, I said. There were good years, good moments. Love isn't fake just because it's contaminated by lies. But I was smaller than I should have been. I bent a lot so everyone else could stand up straight. I saw you as, Mom, he said. This shape in the doorway with a dish towel. I didn't see you as a person who gave things up. That's because I didn't let you, I said. I wanted you to feel safe. That's my job. But now that you're grown, my job description has changed. He nodded. I want to know you. The person, not just the provider. Good, I said. Because the person has opinions. And she's charging interest on all those years she worked for free. We laughed. He apologized again for Thanksgiving, for believing his father without question. He didn't make excuses. He didn't demand immediate absolution. So I forgave him. Not in one swoop. In layers. The way you build flavor in a stew. We rebuilt slowly. He came to the shelter with me sometimes. He met John not as Mom's rich boss, but as a man who volunteered and listened. They talked about work, stocks, ethics. It was awkward at first. Then it wasn't. Lily took longer. She went quiet after her angry Christmas text. Months went by. I saw her life only through social media photos of brunch, yoga poses, filtered sunsets. Michael featured heavily, always with some craft beer or ironic t-shirt. Then, about 8 months after Thanksgiving, I got a call. It was nearly midnight. I was in bed at my little apartment, a book face down on my chest. Hello, static. Then a small, broken voice. Mom, my heart stuttered. Lily, she burst into tears. Loud, heaving sobs that transported me straight back to scraped knees and middle school heartbreaks. Mom, I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry. You were right. You were right about everything. I was horrible to you. I'm the worst daughter ever. Whoa, I said, sitting up. Take a breath. Tell me what happened. Michael cheated on me, she sobbed. With some girl from his office. He said it just happened and it didn't mean anything and he didn't want to hurt me. He sounded just like Dad. And all I could think was, This is what Mom felt for years. And I yelled at her. She hiccuped. Mom, I'm so ashamed. Oh, life, you petty little dramatist. Part of me wanted to say, good, feel it, understand. But the bigger part, the mother part, wounded but still beating, just heard her little girl in trouble. I'm sorry he hurt you, I said softly. I'm so sorry, baby. I wish I'd believed you, she whispered. I wish I'd. You're so strong. You locked the door at Christmas. You got a lawyer. You got a job. I just sat here crying and eating ice cream and stalking the other girl, she sniffed. How did you do it? Badly at first, I admitted, with a lot of tears in the pantry, then with help from a lawyer, from friends, from a man who happened to show up under a bridge and offer me a job. She pulled in a breath. Mom, she asked, tentative, are you happy? The old me would have lied, sugar-coated. I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't worry. The new me told the truth. I'm healing, I said. I have a job I love. I cook every day, not just for people who expect it, but for people who appreciate it. I have someone in my life who treats me with a kind of care I didn't know men were capable of. I paused. And I have boundaries. That's new. That's hard, but it's good. She let out a shaky laugh. I don't have any of those. You can, I said. Starting now, we talked for an hour. I didn't let her turn it into self-flagellation. Guilt is a useless seasoning. It dominates the dish and makes you forget what you were trying to taste. At the end, she said, very quietly, do you think we could start over? Not like it was, but better? Yes, I said. But like I told your brother, we do it as grown-ups. You don't get to call only when you're in crisis. I'm not an emotional ambulance. I'm a person with a life. You're welcome in it, if you remember that. I will, she whispered. I promise. And, Mom? Yes, I'm proud of you. Oh, I wasn't ready for that. Thank you, I managed. I'm proud of me too. Time passed. As of the day I'm recording this, it's been almost 2 years since that Thanksgiving turkey. 2 years since my husband walked into the kitchen and said, Jane, I'm leaving you. 2 years since my kids chose their father's story over mine. 2 years since I drove under that bridge with 25 containers of food and met a millionaire who didn't know how to hug. A lot has changed. Let me tell you what my life looks like now. First, work. I still cook for John, but the role has expanded. We opened a small restaurant together. Yes, really. He insisted on calling it Jane's Table. I argued for something fancier. He said, your name is the fanciest thing about this place. And for once, I didn't deflect. It's not a massive, multi-location empire. It's one space. Warm light. Mismatched chairs I picked out from estate sales. Shelves with cookbooks and plants. A long wooden communal table down the middle. We serve simple, beautiful food. No foam. No tweezers. Beef stew that tastes like forgiveness. Roasted chicken that tastes like coming home. Bread you tear with your hands and share with strangers. 3 nights a week, we host community table dinners. Pay what you can meals where people from the shelter and people from the boardroom sit together and eat the same things. I hired my kitchen staff myself. They're not all 20-something tattooed line cooks. One is a 55-year-old woman who left an abusive marriage and hadn't worked outside the home in 30 years. One is a man in his 60s who lost his job and his confidence at the same time. One is a homeless woman from under that bridge whose chili puts mine to shame. We cook. We talk. We heal. John invested in the restaurant, of course, but he didn't control it. We're partners on paper, but he likes to say he's just the guy who signs checks and does dishes. He comes into the kitchen sometimes, rolls up his sleeves, washes sheet pans. The staff loves him, mostly because he never pulls rank. They also love watching me boss him around. Steward, that knife is dull. Put it down before you embarrass yourself. Yes, chef. I'm telling you, ladies, there are few things more satisfying than hearing a billionaire say, yes, chef, to a woman his age. Second, love. Yes, I used the word. I didn't rush it. For the first year, John and I danced around it, slow and cautious. We dated. We went to jazz clubs, movies, quiet dinners. He held my hand in public, but never pulled me into more than I was ready for. He sent me flowers sometimes, but not the generic dozen red roses. He sent potted herbs for my kitchen, a vintage copy of my favorite cookbook, pages stained with someone else's memories. A note that said, "For the chef who remembered her own heat." We fought occasionally, grown-up fights, about work-life balance, about how much of his money we should pour into pro bono meals, about my tendency to try to do everything myself. He never called me crazy. He never stormed out. He never punished me with silence. When I was overwhelmed, he said, "How can I make this easier?" Not, "Why are you making this so hard?" When I pulled back, scared of needing him, he said, "We can slow down. I'm not going anywhere." One night, about a year after Thanksgiving, we closed the restaurant, cleaned the kitchen, and sat together at the bar with 2 glasses of wine and a shared piece of chocolate tart. It was late. The staff had gone home. The lights were low. Billie Holiday was playing again. John says I'm predictable. I say I know what works. He was quiet, fidgety even. That man has negotiated billion-dollar contracts without blinking. And here he was, nervously wiping crumbs off the counter. "What's going on in that head of yours?" I asked. He looked at me, really looked, like he was measuring something huge against his chest. "I love you," he said, just like that. No grand speeches. No, "I think I might be falling." Just 4 words, simple and clear. My heart did this strange double beat. Not from shock, from recognition. Because somewhere along the way between the turkey under the bridge and the stew in the cabin and the mornings in the restaurant, I had started loving him too. Not as a rescuer, not as a wallet, as a man. Flawed, funny, infuriating, kind. "I know," I said softly. He laughed, startled. "Well, that's bold." "It's true," I said. I felt it growing. I was just waiting to see if it was real or rebound. And he asked, suddenly serious. "And it's real," I said. "I love you, John." His shoulders relaxed. His eyes went suspiciously bright. He reached across the bar and took my hand. "For the record," he said, voice husky, "this is the first time in my entire life I've said those words and not been terrified of the answer." "Good," I said. "We're too old to be scared of our own hearts." We didn't rush off and get married. There were no rings that night, no registries, no announcements. We just sat there, 2 people in their late 50s and mid-60s, holding hands over a sticky bar and letting the truth settle into our bones. And I will tell you this, because no one told me, being loved at this age for your strength, your scars, your stories is nothing like young love. It's quieter, deeper, less about butterflies, more about roots.